Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to each one of you who have taken out time from your busy schedules. And I would say this is another round of our initiative so as to make you all understand what is the beauty of wealth creation. When we say wealth creation, a lot of things comes in our mind. Markets are volatile, what to do, what not to do, how to start investing. There are people who are just beginners. They want to understand what is the right approach. There are certain people who are already investing for the last many decades. They want to understand how to handle the portfolio. And so as to cater such kind of all the queries of the customers, we do welcome all our esteemed speakers from renowned AMCs who can share their thoughts and who help people like to understand and to understand the markets, to understand the portfolio, and take the wise investment decision. Today we have with us our esteemed speaker, Mr. Gaurav Parija from Bandhan AMC. Bandhan AMC, people must be excited to know it's a new AMC. But yeah, Bandhan Bank everyone knows, and they have tied up with IDFC AMC recently, and they are going way far since they are already among the top 10 AMCs in India as far as asset management is concerned. And with the expertise of the esteemed management, I believe it will achieve new heights. Let me introduce Gaurav Parija, though he's a renowned personality, he need not any introduction, but still, given a chance, I would like to say something about Gaurav. He is head of sales and marketing in Bandhan AMC, over 25 years of experience in sales, marketing, business development, and strategic initiatives. Before Bandhan AMC, Gaurav was associated with Franklin Templeton as director responsible for new initiatives and business development. Prior to that, he was with Franklin Templeton Asset Management as National Sales Director, Head Retail Advisory Services, Head Alternate Distribution, multiple roles in different AMCs. Parija holds a postgraduate diploma in business management from IIM Bangalore. Apart from that, there's always strategy and wisdom towards investments help a lot of investors to create wealth. And with this, I would like to invite Gaurav to share his thoughts on SIP as a strategy, how SIP do wonders, helps in wealth creation, and as the title of this webinar says, zip your sip. So I think you all had to just be on your chairs, on the seats where you are comfortable with, and just zip yourself for next 1 hour. And it's gonna be a very interactive session where Gaurav will share some kind of thought process, philosophy, and the investment psychology of the customers and how SIP can do wonders for you. Without taking much time, I'm inviting Gaurav to continue with his thoughts. And welcome, Gaurav. Thank you.
Thanks, Mohit, and always a pleasure to be on the platform. I'm not sure if the presentation is can be seen.
Yeah,
Can I get
it
a
is visible.
confirmation that somebody?
Yeah, it is quite
Okay.
visible. Please go
So
ahead.
I think, yeah. So thanks, Mohit, and welcome everyone for this evening webinar. We've tried to keep it fairly simple and more storytelling. This is pretty much my experiences of investing over the last 20-25 years, and not some mantra or specific secret sauce. We're trying to keep it very commonsensical. So the title, as you read, is Zip Your Sip. What we are trying to tell you over the next 20-25 slides is many of you today know the concept of SIP, which is Systematic Investment Plan. But over the many years, what we find is people make some very, very simple or I would say errors in doing the SIP. Either they overcome it, they stop their SIPs, they're not sure how long they should do. One of the most irritating questions I actually get to hear is कितना दिन का होना चाहिए SIP, and that for me is the first of the mistakes people do. And my simple answer to anyone who is asking the question is जब तक आपका PF कटता है तब तक आप SIP कीजिए. When your PF stops, which effectively means when you stop working, that's when you should stop your SIP. So there is no formula which says you should do a SIP for 28 months or 36 months or 48 months. You keep investing till such time you work. So with this, let me move to my first slide, which is it changing?
Mm, no, Gaurav.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the second question we keep getting asked because we represent the mutual fund business and the asset management business is, sir, kya tip hai? What is the tip for creating wealth? And while we want to believe that we are God's gift to mankind for creating wealth, the reality is very different. Actually, if you were to ask me, the secret sauce to creating wealth is, in our opinion, three very simple things. The first, and while it appears extremely boring, some of you might have seen it multiple times, but trust you me, if you want to create wealth over the long run, there are three simple things you have to focus on. The first is asset allocation. And asset allocation very simply means over your life, you would have multiple goals to achieve. Some goals are in the immediate future, some goals are over the long term. For example, retirement is a long term goal. And for each of the goals, you need to be able to diversify your investment across various asset classes. Now, asset classes are equity, debt, or fixed income as we know it, gold, real estate, and other things. We don't consider real estate from an investment perspective because it's not liquid. And it's absolutely critical while it looks very simple and very boring that, oh, what is this big thing about asset allocation? Trust you me, there is actually a study which has been done in the US where they analyzed 1,000 people who had made wealth over 25, 30 years and asked and tried to figure out as to what was the reason they made so much wealth. And this first two actually popped out in the survey that almost everyone had got their asset allocation right. And second and most important is when you are investing, it is critical to manage one's emotions, especially financial and physical emotions, because markets will test your patience or your fear and greed emotions will keep coming out from time to time. And the last thing which I have added and I personally like very much is actually investing is remembering a formula we had learned in school, which says future value is present value into 1 plus R to the power n. R is your rate of return, n is the period for which you invest. And while I will not focus on this formula in the presentation today, very simply, the more money you invest today, which is present value, the more returns it gives you over long term, which is R, and the more number of years finally decides the quantum of wealth you create, which is your future value. So it's as simple a formula which all of us have learned in our school. If I had to move ahead, why is asset allocation important? And we've tried to illustrate that with a very interesting chart, which many of you would have actually seen in multiple media releases or social media, WhatsApps, and all of that. So if you have to look at the last nearly 10 years, what you find is this slide depicts how various asset classes have moved over a period of time in this color coding. It's like a chemical table. And what it says is, and if I had to pick one category, the small cap category, which I think many of us on this call love to buy into small and mid cap because we think that is where you'll get maximum return. Look at how the small cap has performed since 2013. So in 2013, it gave a return over the last year of minus 9.7. Then it went, so when it was minus 9.7, and if I had to take a poll in 2013 and ask 100 of my investors, would you want to invest in a small cap segment? They would say, no, it is very risky. It is down 10%. Look what it did in 2014. It went up to 63% return over 1 year. Now, if I had to went back to the same 100 people and ask, would you want to invest in small caps now? Everyone would say, why not? I will in fact sell my house and buy small caps. And they would have jumped into small caps and next year return was 6%. So slight disappointment. And suddenly the next year, it again fell all the way down to 1.8. And this is what the beauty of the concept of asset allocation is, that every category or asset class keeps moving all over the place, including real estate, which is marked in orange. And given that, like I said, while we believe we know which asset class will do well, trust you me, no one in the world knows which asset class will do well. And that is why it is absolutely critical that for every goal you have, and depending on the tenure and your risk profile, you have to first determine your asset allocation. And that is where Mohit and his team at Bajaj are the people to reach out to get you the advice as to what I should be doing to invest. Now, if that's the case, let us move to the main agenda for today, saying what are the pitfalls or what are some of the issues we find when it comes to investing in SIP. And like I said, let me start with a story of two schoolmates, Raj and Simran. So Raj is is at 20 was very, let's say some years back, was 25 years after finishing his graduation and studies, took up a role as interior designer. His approach in life was on the movie Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, basically saying ki boss, I am young, I just started my job, let me have fun and let me just party and enjoy, travel around. So like you say, he was fun loving, travels extensively, hangs out with friends and all of that. So this is the first character we wanted to introduce, which is Raj. The second character is Raj's actually schoolmate, Simran. She also, after her engineering, took up a job at 25 years. She, on the contrary to what Raj was slightly more professional, wanted to meet life needs balance, liked painting, but her belief was that kal ho na ho. So she was a person who believed in savings a little. Raj wanted to spend, Simran wanted to save before spending too much. Now, what happens is Raj and Simran actually, after 10 years of their working, meet at their school reunion. So when they are both 35, they happen to go to their school reunion and catch up. And as they start talking, Raj asks Simran ki Simran kya chal raha hai, what are you been doing and all of that. Simran says, "नहीं, engineering के बाद मैं एक नौकरी लिया था, it is good, and I've been putting away a little of my savings every month, 10,000 rupees into this, what is this SIP people say, so I've been doing an SIP and all of that." And in return, Simran asks Raj, how has been your life over the last 10-15 years? And Raj is saying, ये तो मेरा तो हर दिन party है. I've been having a blast, I've been traveling, I've having go to multiple cities, I've seen so many countries. तो सिमरन से पैसा बचाने का क्या बोलता है, नहीं अभी तो यंग हूँ, बाद में देख लेंगे, अभी आई एम एंजॉयिंग लाइफ एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट. Now with this they go back home and suddenly Raj realizes that while I have been having a blast and a party, ये सिमरन तो थोड़ा अकलमंद निकली and she's actually putting away some kitty which will come in handy. Let me start investing from tomorrow. So at the age of 35 the bulbs came on. And Raj said, okay, I've had enough partying in my life. Let me now become a little bit more cautious and plan for my future and let me save some money. And he started a SIP of 10,000 rupees from that day. On the contrary, Simran said, no, you know what, I've been had such a boring life. ये देखो राज तो फुल मस्ती कर रहा है, मैं तो एक भी हॉलीडे नहीं ले पाया हूँ, मैं तो कोई भी कंट्री नहीं देखा हूँ, तो आज से मैं सेविंग बंद करता हूँ. Let me just go and party and get more out of life. So they go back and their approach to savings is, let's say, completely flips. So Raj starts the concept of saving. Simran wants to stop all her savings and just wants to spend all her money. So this is what happens, that from spend now, save later, he now becomes save now, spend later. And so he starts investing at the age of 35. And diligently for the next 25 years puts away rupees 10,000 per month. Simran so total invested amount over the next 25 years was 30 lakhs. Simran on the other hand, and I'll come to the corpus at the age 60, that's like a little secret. Simran had started investing at the age of 25. She did it for 10 years, but वो reunion के बाद वो बंद कर दी. She said, enough is enough, let me now not save anymore. And she had invested SIPs of rupees 10,000. So for 10 years, she had put away only 12 lakhs. Now, Raj started at 35, ended at 60, put away 30 lakhs. Simran started at 25, stopped her SIP at 35, and only could invest 12 lakhs. Now, guess what? And I'm sorry, I can't show you the actual value. I will tell that out, but I don't know if there is a chat system and all. So if I had to ask a quiz, someone who has invested nearly 2.5 times more versus to the other person. So Raj actually put away 30 lakhs versus 12. Surprisingly, because Raj started 10 years later, the magic of compounding took its own time, and you'll be very, very surprised to know that the corpus at the end of 60 years for Raj was 4 crores. But the corpus for Simran, despite pausing a SIP at the age of 35, was 14 crores. And that for us is the first insight we wanted to leave behind, that the earlier you start, and if you have to remember the school ka formula, जितना टाइम आप n को दोगे उतना टाइम बेटर है. So from a SIP perspective, if there are people who just started getting into their jobs, my first advice would be, please start a SIP, albeit of 500,000, 2,000, 5,000 rupees immediately. Having said that, I would also want to put in a little bit of a caution that whenever we talk about SIP, there is this behavior of 0 and 1. 0 means people don't like the concept and don't start, or some of us like it so much that we tend to invest a lot of money. Now, my only piece of advice is, do look at most of your expenses. Ensure that the amount of SIP which you do today, you can sustain over longer periods of time. Because there is no fun in saying, Mera salary is 100, after expenses is 60, I will put away 55 rupees in SIP because I'm so enthused that SIP ke liye I'll get all the money in the latter part. Do a SIP which is reasonable and sustainable. So that is where the first insight comes. The second is, it is good to start saving even if it's in one pot, but is it optimal and efficient, and what could be better? And here, what we want to again reintroduce the concept of asset allocation, that if you have to look at how our parents invested, many of our parents or our grandparents, the moment we were born, immediately went and started what was called a RD, a recurring deposit. Why is debt important? Debt is important because while equity is a great asset class over the long run, debt plays what is called a counter-cyclical behavior to equity. That means if equity doesn't do well, debt acts as the cushion. So it is very important that when you also invest, there is no rule in the world of investing which says that your SIP should only be in equity. Now, if you look at our industry talking or any wealth manager talking, they always believe that investing in SIP should be in equity. Our belief, and this is a very different belief we at Bandhan AMC carry, that for various goals in life, it is important to have a right balance. So if you think asset allocation is important, like we talked about, ensure that in your SIP also you do the asset allocation. And hence you have to look at SIP between some amount in equity and some amount in fixed income or debt. And that is what we believe, that systematic investing is not only in equities, but also spans to fixed income mutual funds. The third thing is, we have to understand the difference between what is the amount of risk and what are goals. So what are goals and why do we invest? So very broadly, obviously everyone in this call would have various goals, but we've taken 3 goals which are the most common. One is, many of you want to take a vacation with your family. Many of us want to get married. And lastly, I'm sure all of us on this call at some stage will retire and hence want to create a kitty for retirement. Now, if this is the case, let us now look at how to differentiate your goals. Now, the first is, a vacation clearly is a goal which is coming up in the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And hence what we say is that this goal needs to be bucketed in what we call a short-term goal. Now, a short-term goal is a goal which, like I've said, is where the duration of the timing is very near. And hence the amount you need to achieve that goal cannot be in an asset class which is very volatile. So if you were to flash back to the first slide, if you have a short-term goal and let's say you're invested in a small cap fund and the small cap fund comes off by 30%, you will not be able to achieve your goal. So your approach to a short-term goal, irrespective of whether you are a risk-taking investor, has to be a conservative approach. Let's say if you bought a house and you have to pay for the last installment in a year, even though you have the best stock idea, even though you think I'm the most aggressive guy, you cannot not afford to have enough money after 1 year to pay the installment. So your asset allocation has to be conservative, typically equity max 25 to debt. Again, when I said debt 75, equity 25, these are broad guidelines. Little bit of tweaking here, there you have to do with your respective distributor and partner, client, advisor. Second is Raj is marriage, which could be a medium term, which is coming up over the next 3 to 7 years. And hence, unlike the short-term goal, can be a little bit more aggressive, where equity can be 50 and debt can be 50. And the last is retirement. And I don't know the demographics of the people on the call, but I presume most of us on the call would be young age and would have retirements coming over the next 15, 20, 25 years. Now, clearly over a long-term period, there are multiple studies which tell you that equities is the best asset class to beat inflation. And hence, your purpose is long-term, hence your approach has to be aggressive, and hence amount of equity has to be much higher. And in this example, we have said equity has to be 75 and debt has to be 25. So if you have to look at the different way of investing, for a short-term goal, we are pegging equity at 25, but for a long-term goal, we've switched the equity component to 75. And this is very important. Many a time when I start my presentation, people said, what is the, again, best place to invest? And I asked them the question that the way to look about investing is you have to go from point A to point B. Now, point A to point B could be 1 kilometer off, 500 kilometers off, 5,000 kilometers off. Now, obviously, you can't use the same vehicle in the first instance to the second to the third. Similarly, when you come to investing, you have to understand your end point and accordingly plan your investments rather than just looking at the outcome and saying which is the best investment option, because that could have very different outcomes. And that is the insight we want to leave behind, that please, like in the mantra was asset allocation, you have to be able to identify what you are investing for. And one of the things I have done over my last 27 years of working is very diligently, once in a year, lock myself away literally in a room, take a piece of paper and say, where am I in life in terms of my current savings? What are the goals for me over the next 1, 5, 10 years? And do I need to change my investment plan to meet those goals? Because finally, all of these savings and investing, hum kiske liye kar rahe hain? We are doing it because we can lead a better life. We are able to meet our goals over the coming years and have enough money to sustain ourselves over long periods of time. I don't think anyone starts his investment journey saying, I want to become rich, because everyone wants to become rich, including Warren Buffett even today. And that is not the way we should go about investing and planning for the future. The fourth and most important thing about SIP is actually patience. And this is where I think the biggest mistakes happen, not only in SIP investing, but overall investing. Now, like I said, one of the questions which I actually get irritated, which every time comes to me when it comes about SIP is, sir, kitna din ke liye karna chahiye? And jokingly, sometimes I ask कि आपको दिन क्यों चाहिए? क्या आप 1 साल के बाद मरने वाले हैं या 3 साल के बाद मरने वाले हैं? If you are not knowing, so if you are saying that I want to do it for 36 months, there has to be a scientific reason of why 36. So like I showed you in the previous slide, first identify आप किस लिए निवेश कर रहे हैं, and accordingly we'll tell you what is the best approach rather than the other way around. The second thing people forget is that many a time they invest in SIP, they're convinced, but over some periods they find that returns are not commensurate. Now, let me give you a very interesting story, and this story is about a very famous personality. Now, many of you would be surprised that here is this kid who had actually a very difficult childhood. He was not a typical child. He had speech difficulty. He couldn't speak properly. Like the movie Tare Zameen Par, where the kid who used to jumble the words, B ko D likhta tha, D ko B likhta tha. He used to repeat sentence. Class में participate नहीं कर पाता. He was not able to communicate properly. So he was not a great student. Now, many instances, what happens is, as a parent, we don't give up. If our kid or daughter or son is not that, we keep persevering, keep trying to get him to a school which is for special ability. So what his parents did was they continued to believe in. They realized that this person had some very different skills. They didn't give up. And the kid also continued to put his best, and he continues thus to become the best. Now, again, I'm not sure, I don't know how the chat system works, but you'll be surprised as to who the celebrity or who this child grew up into. This child actually was Albert Einstein. And today he's known as the father of modern physics, and he won the Nobel Prize in 1921. Now, why am I talking about Albert Einstein suddenly in a webinar on SIP and investing webinar? I'm saying this is because there is a clear lesson from this on how we invest. And let me try to narrate this through again some data points. Now, let's say you had invested somewhere and last 1 year returns was greater than 20%. As an investor, what we would be feeling is extremely high, feeling on top of the world, saying I'm the person who knows the best about investments and emotions. And once we are seeing 20% return, what do? We typically invest more. Now, there could be a scenario where you had invested in some place and the return was between 10 to 20%. So you are moderately happy. And then you say, okay, theek thaak chal raha hai, let me stay put. The third scenario where you had invested, your return is between 0 to 10%. Emotions is not happy, not sad, but little confused, saying ki boss theek decision liya ki nahi, so let me I'm not very happy but not very disappointed. And what you do, you want to reevaluate, review, figure out which other asset class is doing well and all of that. And the last is if you had invested and your return is actually negative, clearly your emotion that time is, oh God, where did I get into? ये किसके बात सुन के मैं यहाँ पे निवेश किया? Is this the right thing to do? And 9 out of 10 times what we find is people get out of their investments or stop their investments. But look at the beauty of all of this. For the person who had seen 1 year return in excess of 20%, and these are actual return data of the S&P BSE Sensex as of July 22. Now, for the person in the first row, the next 5-year return was 9.9. For someone who only had returns between 10 to 20% in the previous year, his return actually went up to 11.7, 14.3, and surprisingly, if your last 1 year return was actually negative, and these are over rolling returns over multiple year time periods, it is found that whenever your last 1 or 2 returns are bad, the probability of making returns over the next 5 years is actually the best. So if you have to put your hand to your heart, many of us actually do the reverse. When our returns is the best, we tend to invest more. When the returns are getting challenged or not in line with our expectations, we tend to stop and redeem. This is where you should again, going forward, think of Albert Einstein. If Einstein's parents thought, ye to bacha bekar hai, baat hi nahi kar pa raha, he's not able to communicate, let us pull him out of his school. Remember, Albert Einstein was an era where life was tough. It was prior to the industrial revolution. So they would have said, isko nikalo, get him to work in the fields or in a plant, he will be far more productive. But they persisted. And like in Albert Einstein's case, there are numerous actual data points which show that when your investments are not doing well, but they are in the right asset class, give it time and you will see great returns coming over the next 4-5 years. So please remember, the next insight is what doesn't start well can actually end well too. And like I said, don't overcommit, but continue SIP through good and bad times for the long term. The last point I would want to leave behind for today is many a times people get happy or sad looking at how their fund has done compared to the benchmark or other funds without realizing for 10 years for a certain goal and my return today is in line to achieve the goal, you have to basically put blinkers on and not bother कि आपका neighbor कितना पैसा बनाया है, market कितना पैसा दिया है, because there are multiple ways to look at returns. And again, I will show you some data points to further illustrate that point. Now, given this behavior, there is again multiple studies which have been done which says that the return an investor makes by investing in a asset class or a stock is actually very different from the return of the underlying asset class of the stock. So what does this mean? You pick any mutual fund which has been in existence for the last 15 to 20 years. And let's say hypothetically a fund has returned 15% over the last 15 years. Very few investors have actually had the patience to ride the journey over the last 15 years to get 15% compounded. Because the NAV of the fund doesn't move in a straight line, it goes up and down. And typical investor behavior is when the fund has had a challenging year, they get out of the fund. And this is the same if you are to portray the rise of the index over the last 20, 30 years. There are periods, and in fact, in March 2020, the index actually went down 40%. But even if you had invested in February 2020 and held on till today, your returns would be very, very different and good compared to an investor who got out in March 20 when the markets fell 40%. So if you have to take this further, let us look at one fund A. 1 year return is 3.5. So if I have to ask you a question, is it good, okay, bad? Most people would say the fund is bad. It's not doing well. But what if I had to show you that in the same 1 year, the benchmark of the fund will actually return 2.8, and ask you the same question. Do you now say the fund A has done a good job, okay job, or a bad job? And people will vote differently. More people would say it's done a good job. Now let's take it this a little bit more and look at the same fund. If you had done a SIP in the same fund, where your point-to-point return was 3.5, what we find is that SIP return in that 1 year fund is actually 15.9 and the benchmark is 11.8. Now ask yourself the question, is this return good? Is it okay? Or is it bad? And 99.9 will say this is a fantastic return. The same 99.9 just 1 minute back would have said 3.5% return, वो तो मेरा FD भी उससे ज़्यादा दे देता है. And that is the reason we say you have to look at fund performance in just not a point to point, but over periods of time. And the same thing is, and this is because the power of SIP is that it automatically does one thing, which is it buys more units when the price of the mutual fund is low, and buys less unit when the price of the mutual fund is NAV is high. Now think of your shopping habits over the last 5, 10, 15 years. I will guarantee anyone on this call that when was the last time you actually bought yourself a shirt or a trouser or a salwar or a kurta or a whatever when there was no sale? And the answer would be next to impossible. I really don't think anyone on this call would have gone to a shop when there was no sale and bought it at MRP. If nothing else, today we go to an Amazon, we go to a Myntra, we go to a Ajio, and we definitely get 30-40% off. Why do we do it? Because we inherently want to buy the product. Uska price kam hai to we think it's better and we end up buying more. In investment, the behavior is very different, like I showed you. In investment, when the price is high or when everything seems to be very hunky-dory in the markets and everyone is buoyant, we all want to jump in. But when everything is gloomy, dark, people say recession hoga, equity markets down 30%, no one wants to buy. And this is where SIP does it automatically for you. And many of you know that SIP is a simple concept that you commit a certain amount of money every month from your bank account, which gets automatically debited. And what that does is, because it gets invested in the NAV, so how do you get units? It is the amount divided by the NAV. So automatically, if the denominator is high, you get lesser units. If the denominator is low, you get more units. And it does what we do in our normal life, that you buy more when the price is low and buy less when the price is high. And because of which, while the movement of the NAV is flat, which is this NAV has just gone at the same rate from 71 to 74, you look at what has happened to the SIP return. It is actually 15.9% as against a point-to-point of only 3%. And this is the big power of SIP, that it does what is called rupee cost averaging in your investment style. And hence, if you have to extend that on a 1 year rolling return, the return is 14%. Again, is it good, bad, ugly? 14% compared to the benchmark looks bad, but 14% in most instances is more than good to help us achieve our long-term goal, irrespective of the fact that inflation is at between 5 to 6%. So the insight we want to give is, you should make use of the market volatility. In fact, if you are an SIP investor, you should be the happiest if on the day of your SIP investment, the market actually goes down, because you will accumulate far more units than if the market were at that or at a higher level, or market should have gone up. Secondly, don't get too fixated about looking at performance on a monthly basis, fortnightly basis. Leave it again to people and experts like Mohit and his team. They are there to constantly look at your portfolio, constantly evaluate the schemes you want to go out. My mantra in investing is, all of us on this call are in a certain profession. Some of you might be engineer, doctor, teacher, painter, and all of that. Focus on your profession. You will be making far more money than by focusing on your investments. Leave the investments to the experts, who are the manufacturers like AMCs like us, and your distributors like Bajaj, people in Bajaj Finance.
In fact, this
And
reminds me of a couple of good sayings, that invest and forget, right? Or maybe invest when everyone is scared and selling, and
correct. And so I
sell
would,
when
my
money is high.
last point I would leave behind is, if your investments are not boring,
Yeah,
you are in the wrong place.
true.
And that's one learning I've had in life, that fill it, shut it, forget it. Obviously, don't forget it. Look at it once in 6 months, once in a year. Talk with your partners and distributors. But if you really think that investment should be fun and exciting, then you're not investing in the right way.
True.
So with that, I would end my presentation. And if there are any questions, if people have want to ask, I'll be more than happy to take them.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Gaurav. And I believe uh, to get the answers of all these questions and all these doubts everyone has, that when how to time the market. So I believe no one can time the market, right? But yeah, SIP is one of the good strategy through which you can minimize the volatility in the market, right? Even the dips will give you better units, and the higher NAVs will give you better returns. I think that is the role which SIP is playing, so as to have a disciplined investment in long run, and which gives you a better wealth creation. Okay. Yeah, Gaurav. So separately, we have got a couple of questions from people. I would like to ask you one by one. So Mr. Suraj has asked before this session that what is your view in today's market scenario, while we are seeing there is a immediate dip in IT stocks. If you have some kind of view on the same, so is there any review of portfolio required by the customers for the same, or should they just wait and watch?
So the house view on IT is that we believe we are not selling IT stocks anymore.
Hmm.
We think pretty much the valuations are at a fair level.
Yeah.
Do remember, IT is an integral part of everyone's lives. So while there is this talk of recession in the US and people might stop spending on IT, I don't think anyone can stop spending on IT. Most of us who use Outlook or any other application, constant basis have to pay new licenses to upgrade them. Most businesses IT spendings will remain constant, may not increase, but will remain constant. As of now, at least as a house view, we think we will not sell IT stocks. But individual stocks, I can't comment. It depends on each stock differently. The other point I would leave behind as a generic thought is, please remember, there's a very powerful saying which says market is a slave to earnings. So if any stock shows earnings potential over the next 3, 4, 5 years, eventually the price has to reflect the earnings. In some instances, what the market does is it prices the stock ahead of the earnings, and hence it tends to correct. And many an instance, the stock is not keeping in pace with the earnings, and hence it takes time to go back. So, and the best way to play IT is just buy into a diversified fund which has multiple things, unless you know the sector very well.
And I believe, Gaurav, why we say that always diversify your portfolio and do the asset allocation, that holds true in current scenario. While
Absolutely.
IT stocks are not showing that kind of performance, on the other hand, we have seen gold has shined again so much. So I believe that yes, with a mix of asset allocation and the right asset allocation in the portfolio, with timely review of the same, makes wonder to the portfolio of the customers.
Yeah, so remember the table I showed you. I think that's the table I always swear by.
Yes.
Invariably, the place you want to get away from is surprises you and gives you the best return next year.
Certainly, certainly. There are few new customers and first-time customers also in this webinar. They also want to know what should be the right strategy for them to start investing and how much portion of their income they should start investing in mutual funds.
It's actually a very, very interesting and apt question. Like I said, if you are new and you are already starting to thinking of investing, it's a great thought. And congratulations on that. When I started my career, sadly, I started in AMC business, so the thought of investing came. But when I look at a lot of my nephews and nieces, for the first 3-4 years, it's only party time. So if this people want to invest from the day one, it's great. So the way to do it is very simple. Look at what your total salary is. You would have some expenses, knock that off. Of the residual, I would start by putting away 25-30% of it into savings. The mistake people do is, if obviously if you don't have any dependency or dependence, then you can stretch that residual amount to go as high as 50-60%. But whatever you do, please ensure that those 25% or 50% you are able to sustain for longer periods of time. What I see happening is people, after listening to webinars like this, get so enthused that after their expenses, if they are left with say 10,000 rupees, do a SIP of 10,000. Suddenly next year they have to, let's say, buy a bike or buy a computer. The first thing they do is stop the SIP.
Stop the SIP. Yeah.
Because SIP में क्या होता है, after 12 months, two things can happen. Either your SIP is positive or negative. If they are positive, they'll say, okay, there is some money, let me sell it and buy the latest mobile. If it's negative, any which is you're feeling bad, बोलते हैं अभी बंद कर दो, ये तो बेकार है. So do something which you can sustain and just let it run. Trust you me, even if you have to pick an average performing mutual fund for the last 15 years, the returns would be far significantly better than most of the traditional asset classes which you would have invested.
Right. In fact, Gaurav, I also personally feel that instead of doing SIPs randomly out of the disposable income, one should always have a multiple SIPs in multiple funds, and every SIP, if possible, should be linked to a specific goal. Right.
Absolutely.
I met a customer who said that he invests in liquid funds for a quarter so that he can pay the quarterly fees of the children. Right. He make a SIP in liquid funds for a year so that he can pay for an annual admission fee for the school. Right. Similarly, he invests for medium-term goals. He invests in long-term goals. I think that is way how you can discipline your investment, and you know that yes, this particular investment is low risk, high risk, or medium risk, and how much I can accumulate after a certain period of time, which will suffice the purpose. I believe all these strategies definitely help, and SIP, I must say, is the answer to all such queries and doubts to the people. Right.
Correct.
Any view on the long-term investing? That what should be the ideal period for the person to stay invested in equity? We just get to know a lot of questions about it, that people say where to invest, but no one says then when to sell. So, any thoughts on this?
So, like I said, I'm a firm believer in firstly asking yourself the question as to why am I investing and for what am I investing. Now, if that is not finalized, the answer is very vague. It's like if everyone says equity is great investment tool, but if you had invested over last year for a goal which was maturing this year, you'd be negative. So
Right.
I'm not on the house which says that for everything you should buy equity. It's like there was an ad which you once sold that पानी नहीं आ रहा है प्लम्बर को बुलाओ पेट दर्द कर रहा है आप प्लम्बर को नहीं बुलाते हो ना डॉक्टर को बुलाते हो so for every need of ours you have a different profession who comes and helps. Similarly, you have to first fix your goal. It's a very boring thing when I keep telling point A से point B आप plug करो. Accordingly, we can tell you whether equity is good or fixed income is good or gold is good or whatever is good.
Right.
Now, for equity, the bare minimum, and while people say 5 years, 7 years, I keep coming back to the narrative that why would you want to get out of equity if there is no need? So there is no thing called 5-7. I would let equity. What is equity? Equity is buying ownership of a share of a company. So if you own a company which you like, keep owning it for eternity. No? till you have the need and goal to get out. And once you have that goal and the money you require, you sell it. You don't then say कि नहीं नहीं ये घर का ज्वेलरी है बेचना है या नहीं बेचना है. You saved it for a certain reason. Goal is achieved. Get out of that goal. So for me, equity bare minimum 5 years at least, and the longer you keep it, the better. And that's where the power of compounding actually kicks in.
Certainly.
Remember the Birbal story? I think.
Yeah, please go ahead, Gaurav.
No, the Birbal story is simple. There, I don't know if people, I'm sure many of on this call would have heard it that there was a big famine in the country, and Akbar wanted to get a solution to it, and so Birbal said कि एक contest चलाते हैं, let's ask people to solve it, and whoever wins will give a prize. So then Akbar ji बोले कि ठीक है आप Akbar Maharaj बोले कि सबको बुलाओ, and one priest came, one very elderly person, old frail person came, and he said I have the solution to this, but I need one very simple thing. तो अकबर महाराज बोले क्या चाहिए आपको? बोलता है वो जो चेस बोर्ड है ना, उसमें पहला बोर्ड में एक गेहूं का दाना चाहिए, दूसरा में 2, तीसरा में 4, ऐसे करके चाहिए. तो बिरबल रियलाइज कि बॉस ये तो डेंजर है. अकबर महाराज से ये तो क्या है, ये तो क्या फार्मर को जानता नहीं है, एल्डरली बुजुर्ग को जानते नहीं है, ठीक है दे दूंगा. एंड ही सॉल्व द प्रॉब्लम एंड famine went off, and then he came back again कि सर महाराज मुझे चाहिए मेरा प्राइस. बोले दे दो. So when they started doing this, they realized by the time they completed the second row, the power of compounding had taken such an effect that पूरा kingdom का पूरा गेहूं का सब खत्म हो गया था. And if they had to complete the third row, पूरा दुनिया का खत्म हो जाता. And that's where the what is called the power of compounding, and equity works best on the power of compounding, and it actually kicks it over long periods of time. And that's why I keep saying equity should be over the long period of time. How much longer you can stretch, the better it is. And the reason I say it is many people don't know that if you invest 1,000 rupees every month for 30 years and it grows at 15%, you invest 3,60,000 crores, you'll be surprised. You take your Excel sheets out and do the FV formula. I'll not tell you the answer. You will be shocked at the final value. Just 1,000 rupees, and 1,000 rupees is 2 of us going to a PVR movie and having a popcorn and a Pepsi. उसमें 1,000 rupees उड़ जाता है. But you see the residual value which it will give you, it will shock all of you.
Certainly. In fact, Gaurav, I must say to add to it that yes, often we say that stay long for investment, but yeah, even a fittest person or a wrestler or a boxer need to have a regular health checkup. So same applies in financial health as well. So whenever we are planning to have a long-term investment, it is advisable to keep that portfolio checked and reviewed on regular basis so that you can take your wise decisions about the any kind of churning, any kind of top up in the portfolio, or maybe you want to just shift from one asset to another. Such kind of decisions you have to make. Should not be like that you just invest and keep your eyes closed. You have to have a review also in place at a certain point of time. That really helps in terms of long-term investing. Gaurav, I don't see any more questions, and with this, I would really thanks you as well as Bandhan EMC, and wish you all a new project you have taken up as far as Bandhan EMC is concerned. I wish you all the luck, and I would like to thanks each one of the participants and the viewers as well, and keep watching this space, and we will bring such kind of more webinars with various industry experts who can make you understand the power of SIP, power of investing in mutual funds, and what should be the right investment strategy, and how customer philosophies plays around it. So thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Bandhan EMC.
Thank you, Mohit, and thank you everyone for joining in.
Thank you.